Welcome to Thrive Off the Ladder, the show that gives women the encouragement and guidance to take their talents outside of a corporate office. Through candid conversations and wisdom sharing, we deep dive into the evolution of work and how to step off the ladder that wasn't built for us in the first place. I'm your host, Twanna Toliver. Welcome to Thrive Off the Ladder, the go-to podcast for women who took their talents outside the confines of a corporate office to build a profitable business that not only fills their pockets, but their souls. I'm your host, Twanna Toliver, and I have a really special guest today. We're going to be talking about building a people-first team, and my special guest is Amy Lafko. And before we get started with Amy, let me just read you a little bit about her background. So Amy is a leadership and organizational design expert, mainstage speaker, author, and advisor. Formerly a leader in healthcare operations, she brings real-world lessons and inspirational ideas to different industries to help organizations grow their people so they can grow their business. Hi, Amy.
Hello, I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that, because this is such an important topic. And so I'm so glad you're here. I see your book, People First, in the background. I love it. And yes, I really want to talk about this topic because it's so timely and so relatable to what we're seeing here. Because we have, you have small businesses. A lot of folks started businesses and they were running and doing all of the things, right? Especially women who start businesses, they wear all of the hats, right? Because they're used to doing all of the things. And if you're a solopreneur, you have to finally make this decision like, oh my God, it's time to hire folks. So I really want to really talk a little bit about how your people first method can really get change the mindset to get people to start thinking about making their first hire.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much. And that first hire is critical. And I want to start by sharing that, I came out of healthcare. And so I stepped off the ladder and started Cairn Consulting Solutions in 2018. And so when I stepped off the ladder, I thought I had to do everything myself. It took me a year before I brought on a bookkeeper. And I don't know what I was thinking. I was spending at least a day a month managing my own, Excel spreadsheets, not even QuickBooks, all sorts of things. And it wasn't even the fact that I didn't necessarily want to have a team. It was just that I thought, as a new business owner, can I actually afford to outsource anything yet? Yeah. And what I've learned is the more you do that outsourcing, the more you free yourself up to stay in your zone of genius, do the things that you're going to be really able to excel at. And the amount of pressure that bookkeeper took off of me, the confidence that I knew things were going to be getting done, the fact that my clients weren't saying, are you going to invoice me this month? Just made a world of difference. And so as you start your business, in my book, People First, while the stories are all healthcare, it's universal. I use this methodology with accounting firms. I use it with law firms. We look at it. I had a glass and door manufacturing company where they really wanted to adopt this model. And the idea behind People First is not that people can just do whatever they want, but it's that you create a structure and a system that really helps people have all the tools and understanding they need to be successful. So when you're starting out and you're thinking about where do I want to go, you may have an idea of what you want your company to look like in the next few years or how big it's going to get. You want to start what I started for myself, and what I've done with other people is we say, what are all of the categories of work that need to get done? There's that visionary role, there's that role of, the coordinator of all the projects. There's the administrative work. And you can actually start to build out what those key accountabilities are, even if the role doesn't exist yet. When I was interviewing folks for my book, one of the businesses, she knew that she was going to need eventually a larger org structure. And she started by putting her name in every single box: marketing, finance, human resources. She had her name in every box. And as she got large enough, then she hired someone to go into that box. But you want to be clear on what you're needing and why. And before you make your first hire, get to know yourself and be honest. What do you love to do? What do you hate to do? It does not take long, but I hate scheduling things. I don't know why. And so for my admin, that's one of the things that they had to take off my plate. Now I still use Calendly, but there's all sorts of people who are like, oh, I couldn't find a time, or, I use the software as much as possible. But having someone to do that work, having someone to do the bookkeeping. So it's figuring out who you are. You talk a lot about how to thrive, and that is doing what you love to do and then shedding the rest of it, finding the right people to take on the rest of those roles so that you're doing what you're loving and spending your time there.
I love that. And I'm so glad that you said that. And people struggle with this. And I know when I started my first business, when I started my body care line, Body Blessings, back in 2001, I loved when I woke up in the morning and saw orders, as of course, like anybody that has the e-commerce brand. And I seen all the orders and I would get so excited. And I love being able to, package the box so pretty. Sometimes I would write notes, I would do all the things, but guess what? I didn't like
What
going
didn't
to the
you?
post office.
Yes.
Going to the post office. And so I would have these packages so beautifully wrapped and so excited to go. And I seen the orders, and the way, e-commerce works is that you actually don't see the money in your account until it actually ships out. And so and my customer service started to suffer a little bit because people would say, hey, when am I getting my order? And the package would be wrapped, ready to go.
Pretty.
And I'm like, I don't want to go to the post office. I don't want to do that part of my business. And it took me so long to figure out, Twanna, you need to hire somebody to go to the post office for you.
There's lots of people looking for, just a little bit of extra something, or they love one part but not the other. My virtual assistant, she actually has 4 clients and because she knows how many hours she wants to work a week, and she has 4 people that she works with. But then other parts of it could be like every once in a while something needs to happen. But, my love is speaking. And I just did a conference. There are about 250 people in the room. I got tons of names to add to LinkedIn, add to my email list, build out my CRM. And I was like, God, I hate this stuff. And next day I had a meeting with Rosie, and I said, Rosie, here's all the things. She's like, oh, Amy, this is music to my ears. I love putting this into organization for you. And I'm like, okay, but there's people out there for it. And there's also, of course, a lot of software and things that you can look at as well. But the most important thing is to be honest with yourself about what you love and don't love about your business. I work with some companies where the person is the one starting the business, loves the business development, but hates the follow-up, hates the delivery. Okay, well, then you need to hire people to do the delivery. I'm someone who loves the delivery, so I need to bring in people to help with the marketing, helping with the sales development. So figuring out for you what's most important, because at the end of the day, if you own your own business and it's just you, and we want to live in a people first way, well, guess what? You're the people. So, know what motivates you, know what you love to do, know what you hate.
I love that. And that leads me to this next follow-up question, because I hear this a lot. And I think it has something to do with delegation. So you hear people that say they don't want to hire someone because, one, they don't want to manage someone, and they think it's actually going to add more work. Now I have to train them, and that's going to take time and all of this. Like, how do you deal with that and answer that?
I got to tell you, it's so funny. I literally just did a 90-minute workshop on delegation for doers, because people panic and freak out about it. Here's the reality. The more we look at it on the upfront side, the better we'll have on our outcomes. It's compound interest, the same as savings, the same as anything else. It builds over time. So I've actually had some clients do a self-check. All right, it took me a half hour to do this task a week. Or for me, it took me over a day a month to do my bookkeeping. And so I had to train someone else on my bookkeeping. She knew QuickBooks, obviously. I had to train myself on what I had to do to get to her. But now I spend probably an hour a month instead of a day a month. No matter how much training time that was going to take, that was worth it 4 years ago, because think of how that's added up over time. So I think so often we look really short-sighted at it. Well, it's going to take me longer for the next 6 months. Okay, but if you're going to have this person in this business for the next 6 years, that's going to even out.
Yeah.
The most important factor is getting clear on what the expectations are and what success looks like for the person. I want you to think about it from the standpoint of not just, here's a list of job descriptions are awful. Here is a list of every possible task you could ever have to do. No, I want to get clear on what the core expectations are. And then I want to know what success looks like. So at the end of the month, we're going to sit down and here's what success looks like. My invoices went out. My calendar was managed the way we anticipated. We did bring in 10 new prospects this month because of the business development you were doing. Whatever it is, but get really clear on what the success factors are, because you can have 2 people and say to them, I want you to go do business development. That can mean very different things.
Definitely.
And so we want to talk about what outcomes am I looking for? And the better we do that up front, the easier it is to manage performance and manage the people. It's all about setting expectations.
Yes, I love that, because I had a client that I worked with for a year. She started as a coaching client, and when I always check up on my coaching clients, and I remember when I emailed her to see how she was doing, she was just like, I'm drowning. That was like her 2 words, and she had hired folks to help her, but she wasn't able to manage all of the things that go with hiring people.
Yeah.
And so how do you deal with like the question people are, well, I don't know. They feel like it's, besides the fact that you have to pay someone a salary, but then it's like all of the rules and regulations. Is this a 1099? Is this a full-time, part-time, and all the other things that go with it? And now that we all can work remote, I know my client had some folks that were working in other states, and now you have to figure out what that state, entails. Like, so how do you kind of deal with that piece if you're a small business owner?
So, and especially because I know your listeners are not just in New York, New Jersey, or Pennsylvania, the recommendation I have for you is to go to your small business development group, your SBDC in your area, or go to your SBA to go to a legal clinic, go to a session on HR legality. Or, even if you are a solopreneur, you still are going to have your advisory group, which is your financial team and your legal team. You want to work with your lawyer on what's legal in my state. Putting together a handbook is key for some pieces, but in some states, then the handbook actually constrains you more. So you do want to get clear on what your state legal requirements are from a human resource standpoint. And we can, there's ways that we can help you set up your handbook, make sure that you're compliant with your state and local laws. But that's where you want to pull in your lawyer and say, you're going to do a letter of agreement with someone that's going to clarify all of those pieces in the hiring offer letter. Those types of things are really important.
I love that. And so now let's go to this, it's like the elephant in the room, this whole idea of people first and business growth, profitability. And, and so a lot of, how do they go together? Because most people, when you think of people first, it's just like, well, my customers have to come first. I have to make money. And then, what's left over, I guess my people get. Yeah.
And this is where you want to put some thought into it. The reason that the book is called People First and the approach of leadership that I use is that unless you are the person specifically touching that customer in that moment, you're not the customer is not your primary focus. So let's think about this. Even with your business, when you were doing e-commerce, when that person was taking the mail to the mailbox, they were your person, not the customer, because they were making sure the customer got what they wanted by getting that package delivered on time in the right way, not dropping your beautifully wrapped package on the way. But let's face it, if you had hired someone to take your stuff to the post office and you were not treating them with respect, you were not communicating to them what the expectations were, you weren't clear on success, they're not going to mind if they drop that package. They're not going to care if something didn't go right. Because to them, you're just someone who doesn't really treat them very well. So why should they care? But if we shift and say, okay, you're the person doing the customer service follow-up on this, then I want to treat you well because you're actually the one that's touching the customer, not me.
I love that. That makes perfect sense because it gives them a sense of ownership.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, you know, I've been in several communities and coaching groups. And one of the things that I love, the best communities that I love to be a part is when I see the leader, the head, you know, the person who's coaching. And a lot of times these are well-known, some people call them entrepreneur gurus or whatever the case may be, really women and that are well-known, but they really love their team.
Yeah.
I was in recently an ambassador for a group, and she was, you know, basically onboarding all of the women. And she said, she basically outright said, you know, I'm glad you guys are here. I can't wait to serve you. She introduced her team and she just said, you know, please respect my team.
Yeah.
She told them out front. And so sometimes when we think about taking care of your people, we always go to dollars and cents, which of course that matters as well. But she is really protective of her team.
Absolutely.
She basically said, if my teams, and a lot of times she said, you know, and I remember because in my heyday, back in my corporate days, I was the gatekeeper. If you were nice to me, you weren't getting to that person. What you was not. And I was beloved, just like this woman loves her team. And so if I said to the person that, you know, I was working for, like, yeah, this person was low rude.
Yeah. And when you think about it, if you're building a team now, you know, when I think about some team members, like your bookkeeper, they're not necessarily going to interface with your customers. So it can be different. But when we think about who is my team, if that team feels like they are well cared for, that they are respected, that they are understood, that they are clear about what their responsibilities are, and they are clear on how success is measured, they're going to function more successfully and more purposefully for you. And so, you know, I almost think about it like when you're driving a car, you can get the fanciest car possible, but if you don't take care of it, it doesn't matter because you could hire the absolute best person to be on your team, but if you don't take care of them, they're not going to perform optimally, which is then going to impact your customer's experience. And so it's more of a downstream effect, but I think people want to put on blinders and look past their team and get straight to that customer.
No, this is real talk. And I love this, you know, there's a really popular like financial woman that I follow. I've been following her for years, bought her books and all of the things. And someone had posted, this was about 2 years ago, and I never forget, I always use this as like an example of really treating your people and your team with respect. And, you know, someone was talking, and this is when everybody was talking about making six figures and how that's a flex. And she said, a flex to me is paying my people six figures.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
I screenshot it. I love it. Sometimes I share it as, you know, it's just, and I love that. And not many people, because not many people think that way.
Well, and here's the other thing. We have to remember it's a reciprocal relationship. So with my my new executive assistant, so I have a phenomenal woman that I work with. When I started the business, she did a lot of the virtual assistant work. She did a lot of client logistics, but she loves doing the Canva. She loves being creative and doing that kind of stuff. And so as things were getting busier, she said, Amy, I don't have bandwidth to take on more. And I really don't like this part. So okay, let's figure out what you do love, and then I'll hire out for what you want to let go of. And that's where I brought on my new executive assistant. And I did assessments on her. So I knew her behavioral styles, I knew her motivations. And it was interesting. One of the things that I really strongly recommend everyone do, and it's very clear in the book and in some of the tools that I use, where you're sitting down and saying, okay, it's the end of week 1. Where are we? What's working? What's not working? It's the end of week 2. And so interestingly, Rosie and I were getting into this cadence, and at 1 month in, we had a meeting and she said, I'm feeling very stressed. This doesn't feel settled. It doesn't feel clear. And I feel like there's a lot of discord. And I said, okay, great. Well, I knew that harmony and balance are very important to her. I know that she is a high standards perfectionist. So I understood where she was coming from because of that. But I also just listened to her and I said, okay, what's going to make that better for you? I do not want to lose Rosie. And so in my mind, I could have taken well, you're only an employee, so it doesn't matter what's working for you. It's what's working for me. But what I said is, okay, you're my people. So what do you need? You do the same types of things you ask your customers. What do you need from me? What could we do to make this better? What will make it work for you? And then you get to decide. And Rosie said, here's what I need. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is easy peasy to do.
Yeah.
No problem.
A lot of times
And
it
then
is
something where you're like, okay, that is not something that I can make happen. Like Jen had said, so I want to keep doing these parts, but I don't want to continue to do the EA work. And if I didn't need those other pieces, we would have had to part ways. And that would have been awful, but it would have worked. But in that case, I knew enough to say, okay, here's how we can shift things so that it does work for you and still works for the business. It's not mutually exclusive. And I know when that she's doing projects, they are her best quality because she knows how much she's cared for and thought of and respected.
Yeah, I love that. And that also brings me to this, that again, my whole mantra is thriving off the ladder. And a lot of times as small business owners, especially women, we take a lot of, and I say nothing's wasted. So you definitely take all the good that you've learned, all your experience and expertise. But sometimes we take a lot of the toxic stuff from corporate. And one of them is like you start a job, you get a job description, you get hired, and you're told to do this. And I was always the one, well, why don't we do it like this? Because we've always done it that way. And so you take that. So I hope that we can expand the perspective around hiring. And a lot of times, again, when you were wearing all of the hats as a solopreneur, small business owner, and when you start making your hires, it's great that you've documented stuff and you're telling folks, well, this is how we done it. But I hope that, as a small business owner, you can be open to allowing the talent that you hired to do things probably better than the way you were doing it.
And this is where you need to know what the outcome is. So when we think about, remember when I said success factors? So expectations are, here are the parts of the job that you're going to be doing. Answering emails, filing expenses, or whatever the case may be. It's not just, here's the steps. You're right. It's more about what's the outcome I need. I need all of my expenses reimbursed within 30 days. My contracts to my clients say that I will bill them, that I will invoice them expenses. So I'm going to send pictures to you of all of my receipts, and they need to get expensed within 30 days to the client. Make sure that happens. It's the outcome I'm looking for, not necessarily the how we got to the outcome. And you want to be clear in your business. There might be things that it's not just the outcome, but there are steps that you want for whatever reason. And that's okay. But you really want to look at them and say, does it have to be done that way? Or is that because it's what I'm comfortable with? I had some people that I was interviewing, and they're like, okay, here's the CRM I'm comfortable using. And I'm like, it took me 3 years to figure out this one. I'm not switching. Are you open to using another CRM? So that was an example of when it just wasn't the outcome of, do you mind get the email, but it's how they're going to get them. Right.
Yeah,
and so we want to think about, what part of success are they responsible for? And if it's truly an outcome, paint a really clear picture for them. and then meet with them regularly to see how they're going towards the outcome.
I love that. Amy, this is good. I love this. Thank you so much. But you know what? I have a bonus question. I wasn't planning on asking this.
I love it. What's your bonus question?
So, full disclosure to the audience. So, I was one of the business advisors for the Goldman Sachs program, and Amy was one of the business owners in the program. And so, I want to ask Amy, how was it? We're gonna go back corporate. Remember the 360 reviews? I'm itching just saying it, but we're gonna take it back. I want to know, how was it working with Twanna?
Oh my gosh, I loved it. You know, the things that really struck me were how straight up you were. There was no fluff, there was no muss. I will never forget the day you looked at me and said, Amy, you got to clean your house. And I was like, what? And you're like, you need to clean your house. And here's what you need to do. And it was just concise and clear, but we laughed the whole way through it. And so here's how I know that I was getting good value from you is that when I would come to a Goldman Sachs class and I couldn't wait to seek you out and say, guess what I did this week? It's because I knew how much you believed in me, and I was thinking about the things you were talking to me about that I couldn't wait to share with you where I was and what I was looking for next. And that to me says more than even like what some of the nuggets were themselves. But it was that I felt like we were in it together.
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Amy. I appreciate
Well,
you. Appreciate you. Yes, thank you so much for taking the time out to share your insight and deposit wisdom today to my audience. And I just want to just reiterate, if you grow your people, you grow your business, and that keeps you thriving off the ladder. And so I just want to make sure that you take a step today, whether you have a small team or not, just look and say, what can I do to make their work lighter, easier, make them feel special? And if you're thinking about your first hire, think about, do all of the things that Amy said, just start thinking and brainstorming. And Amy, do you have a last word?
I have one last thought. If you already have a team in place, schedule 15 minutes with each of them over the next week and say to them, what's working? What could we be doing differently? What do you need from me? That is the truest sense of people first. Open-ended questions that just invite conversation. How are you doing? What's working? What's not working? And what do you need from me? That will give you a picture, and then you can figure out, where do I need to go from here?
Oh, no better way to end. I love it. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Again, I'm your host, Twanna Toliver. And remember, keep thriving off the ladder. Till next week. Bye.